Buy, sell or rent your property with Century 21 and you could win a brand new 2-bedroom apartment on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, Australia. Visit c21prize.co.nz for your chance to win.
Welcome back to Your Property Empire. Well, joining me on the show tonight is Stuart Ward, Director of Bell Partners Accountants, and we've just been joined by Charles Tarbey, Chairman and owner of Century 21 Australasia. Well, Charles, before the break we were talking about hiring your team of advisors. Obviously you're in the mortgage broking business as well. Yeah. What's the main difference, would you say, to the viewers out there of going to a broker versus going to a bank?
I think most people are too scared to go to their bank because they might have other business with them, and they feel as though when you go to a bank that you're actually, the offer that a bank generally makes and what happens are two different things. You see the ads on television, we're lending $1 billion on business, whatever, come on down. And it's fantastic, but the actual advertisement, when you get there, you end up in an administrative nightmare. And you don't really get to speak often to the person you need to speak to straight away. Whereas with a broker, you pick up the phone, you can speak to a broker almost instantaneously. And at the end of the day, the broker's selling pretty much the same sort of money as the bank's selling. But the difference is the broker's going to work for you where the bank is going to be looking at you a little differently. And I think that's a massive, massive difference between the two.
Now, Stuart, Bell Partners is obviously involved in kind of mortgage and financial planning as well. When it comes to actually then when you decide to, say, go for a broker over a bank, does it then make a difference which broker you go to, or are all brokers the same?
No, I think it makes a huge difference. I think, brokers can sometimes be persuaded to go to certain providers, and also brokers can sometimes look for an easier option. I mean, I've come across some pretty ordinary ones in the day, but also recently I've come across some really good ones, and those good ones invest time in you. They also look at a lot of providers and say, right, which one's best for you. Then there may be some interest rate differences, some LVR differences, being the debt that they can give you on the property. Those kind of things are really important, and the banks do differ a lot. Some banks go 85% before lenders insurance. Some go 80%. So knowing your client and knowing what they can put in is really important, and a good broker makes the time to invest in that.
They're incentivised differently too, and as you're saying, some banks will offer a different upfront commission or a different trail. So, like sometimes it just comes down to business at the end of the day. But most of the brokers out there that have been in the business for a long time, they know how to work it for the client, and they want to keep the client, and they want to get the client's family and friends and so on and so on. And I'd go to a broker most of the time. I go to a bank broker knowing it's the same connection. But that person I go to, I just pick up the phone, and things get done, in a very, very quick manner because of it.
So if you don't know any brokers, how would you find the one that's right for you?
I think referral is a very, very strong way to go. I think you can ask family and friends who they've used in the past, and I do really think that that's going to help a great deal for you to find the right person. And it strengthens the connections for all parties when you ask for referral and you go to somebody that your family have already done business with. And I think it really strengthens the relationship and makes it even better for you.
Now, Stuart, obviously a lot of people, they want to save money, and quite often I hear from brokers the first question people ask is how much can you do it for? What's your cheapest rate? Is that the best question to be always asking?
Well, I mean, the broker gets paid by the bank, so the brokers can basically be, put as much time in you as they can, and they're looking after you because they're going to get paid from the bank. So that's important. And then the best rate, the interest rate's obviously the key, but the service they can provide for you, the flexibility, the timing they can provide things, and the on services they can provide are important as well. So hopefully your broker will get to know you and point you in the right direction as far as those particular things. The best brokers are the ones that call you and say, right, well, we're in a highly competitive market by way of banks and providers as far as LVR and banks out there and facilities. If a bank rings you and says a new product has just come on the market, let's look at your facilities and what's been going on, because you may have had it for 3 or 4 years, and this might be the best facility for you going forward. They're the best ones. They know their client base the best, and they can they're very proactive.
And Charles, I guess coming from the real estate perspective as well, is the difference between some brokers could be the difference between they could get you $1 million at maybe 4%, and actually you could get the property of your dreams, versus one that lends at 3.5%, but you only get 800 grand.
Yeah, and I think again we talk about the relationship. Sometimes the agents that you use will have a relationship with the broker, and so although it might seem that they're not at arm's length, they really are. And they work very closely together, and I think that's an important part of the process. Look, Chris, interest rates are important, as you were saying, Stuart. When you look at the advertisements out there, all the banks and all the brokers, all the mortgage houses advertise rate. They talk about the best or cheapest rate, and they don't often talk about whether you can get 80% or 90% or 75%. They talk rate, and they get you there, and then the discussion may change subject to your circumstances.
Whereas my thing is how many properties will you lend me on? If I can buy an extra property, I always say I can make another 50 or 100,000, whereas cheaper rate maybe saves me 10 or 20.
That's right, yeah.
Well, there's been a bit of talk recently about the valuation the banks are putting on the property. It may be a little bit less than what the price they're paying. So those kind of conversations are very important conversations to be had out there. I mean, 10 years ago, you could buy a property and be pretty confident the banks will put the same value on it as far as what you bought it for. Now, in the market we're in, you've got to know more about what prices the bank's going to put on it as well, and that's important.
What is that telling you about the market?
I'm not going to say.
Exactly.
Yeah, what's that saying?
Let's jump into the auction clearance rates.
Yeah, look, Chris, if I do my comparisons, as you know, week on week, but also year on year, and it's quite remarkable how high the auction clearance rates are, 77.5% nationally, compared to this time last year, where the rate was 63.8%. I just find it extraordinary when everybody's, we've always talked about how it's slowing down. Sydney came in at best at 84.2%. And when I look at Sydney's figure, and this is not a joke, this time last year it was under 60%. Canberra, we talked about Donald Trump. Peter Switz and I talked about the Trump effect on radio this afternoon. I said, well, it hasn't impacted on Canberra because Canberra had a clearance rate of 83.8%.
Is that because our politicians look absolutely wonderful compared to the US ones?
Canberra must look fantastic compared to what's happening in the US. Melbourne came in at 77.2. They're all really good, solid clearance rates across the country.
Sounds good. Homes advertised for sale?
Up slightly, 0.84%, but that's been every week now. We've had for quite a few weeks. We talked about New Zealand. It's going on a roller coaster ride with its stock, and I don't know what the impact today of the earthquake's going to be. I spoke to our guy Joe Loopy in Wellington. He said the whole CBD's shut down. We're shut out of the office. We can't go anywhere near it, and people don't want to talk real estate. But their listing numbers rose by 25.5% this week over last week.
That's massive. Now, obviously we're coming up to Christmas. Will it suddenly stop? Like, will it get into December and people just won't list?
Yeah, I think there'll be quite a few more people thinking maybe it is time to list because the stock levels are low, and I think we might see stock be nice and steady for quite some time. I don't think it's going to go crazy, but New Zealand has been having that up and down for quite some time.
And what about rent price movements?
Yeah, they haven't changed much. They're down 0.24% over this time last week, but they're still up 1.92% for the year to date. The best performing capital city was Sydney, at 1.1% increase over this time last week. But the two worst performing were actually Hobart, negative 1.63%, and Perth at negative 1.66%. So there's still a lot of movement downwards in some areas, and the rest of the country's picking up the balance to keep it positive.
And then finally, the vacancy rates.
Yeah, here we go. This is not good. This is not good news. Sydney was great again. Second week in a row, 0.84%. Really good. Really good to see that. The Perth market is the one I'm concerned about, but Melbourne came in at 3.3%, and Perth came in at 10.07%. I didn't want it to breach 10, but it has. Collectively, that's 4.74% for those three capital cities, but realistically, Perth is in a lot of trouble. The marketplace, the US economy might actually bolster places like Perth again, and if it does with the resources, I hope people remember what happened in the last year and don't forget if the market starts to climb for them. Yeah. What can go wrong?
Some good results. Just very quickly, obviously coming up to Christmas, New Year's resolutions could be a good time to basically review your mortgage. Always a good time, once a year or so.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Reviewing your mortgage and just knowing your advisor and making sure you make those calls because, if you're going to make a New Year's resolution, you want to make sure your advisor's making that investment into your resolution as well.
Stuart Ward from Bell Partners, Charles Tarbey from Century 21. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us at home. We'll be back again next week. Until then, I'm Chris Gray. Good night.
The information featured in this program is general in nature and therefore should not be relied upon. Guests appearing on the program may have commercial arrangements with some of the companies mentioned. Before making any investment, insurance or financial planning decisions, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you.